Hi, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a homebirth mum of 2 little boys, I'm a mental health nurse, a homebirth advocate broadly, but also more specifically in the state of Victoria, and I'm an ex-student midwife. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is episode 30, and today we hear from Delle's, mum of 2 from Perth. Going into her first pregnancy, Delle's hoped for what she called a low intervention birth. But when her pregnancy took a sharp, unexpected turn, labelling her as high risk, she ended up being fear-mongered into a C-section. Leaving that experience with birth trauma, Adelle started exploring vaginal birth after Cesarean, which led her to finding home birth after Cesarean. Today, Adelle shares her journey to finding HBAC and then her redemptive goddess HBAC with baby Atticus. Before we get into the episode, I want to share another great podcast that might interest you called Born for This. This is a podcast that dives deep into the unfiltered emotional roller coaster of motherhood through the lens of Beth, a mother of 2, raising her children, some may say the unconventional way. She has honest and raw conversations with people who have influenced her along her journey, sharing information that she wished she had known before having children. Born for This is the one-stop shop to getting a little woo-woo on parenting and a safe space for women and parents to feel supported in their decisions to do things unconventionally. You can find the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts under Born for This or on Instagram at bornforthis_the podcast. And now enjoy this amazing home birth after Cesarean story from Delle's. Welcome, Delle's, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're joining from Perth, right?
I am, yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice, hot, sunny Western Australia.
Yeah, it's like quite warm in Melbourne here today as well. I thought going to, like, over the weekend, because we just got back from India and it was really, really hot in India. And when we got back, I was like, oh, finally, like, autumn's here. It's so nice. I can put on long pants again. And then the past 2 days have been like 30, 35, like.
So no reprieve.
No reprieve. No reprieve. Do you want to start by telling the listeners a little bit about who you are, who's in your family?
Yeah, so obviously we're from Perth. It's myself, Adelle, my husband Ash, and our 2 sons. So we have Samson, who's 3, and Atticus, who just turned 18 months. So yeah, that's us.
Yeah, amazing. And so Samson was born via Cesarean, and Atticus you had at home.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Amazing. So you're sharing a HBAC story. I love these. They're so redemptive.
They are. They really are. Yeah.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about your pregnancy and the birth with Samson?
Yeah. So we got pregnant with Samson and I was really, really excited, obviously. And I'd had 2 miscarriages before. Yeah. So I was a bit apprehensive with this one just because obviously you get like quite anxious, don't you?
Yeah.
So we got through to like the 12 weeks and I thought like, oh, okay, this is good. And then we had our 12-week scan and the sonographer was like, there's some abnormalities with his neurical fold. And she basically, not a doctor, but obviously I didn't really understand at the time, but she was like, oh, well, he'll probably have Down syndrome. So you might need to start thinking about like termination and stuff. And I was like, whoa, like steady on, like you're a sonographer. She's like,
come from a scan.
Yeah, I know.
And then tell me I've got to terminate my baby.
Yeah, I was like, beg your pardon, like what is going on? So anyway, we like left quite quickly because I was quite upset, and I booked a doctor's appointment for the next day, and my doctor was like, like I don't think that she has like all of the information, so she shouldn't have really said that to you. She was like, obviously neurical folds can be like thicker, and she was like, it's just something that we'll have to do, so let's refer you to the tertiary hospital just to get like all the checks done. So sort of as that happened and I got referred, very quickly between like 12 weeks and 16 weeks, it became like a normal pregnancy to a high risk, like oh, he might have this, he might have that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I realized very quickly that my, birth center, low intervention birth potentially is just getting whisked away from me.
Yeah. What did you kind of know, before even becoming pregnant with Samson? What was your understanding of pregnancy and birth? Did you know about home birth? You obviously knew about birth center.
Yes, yeah. So I know about home birth. My grandma actually gave birth to my dad and my uncle at home in the UK.
Yeah,
so she's the only one in our family, but she was always talking about her home births, and I kind of romanticized the idea of it.
Yeah.
But it sounds so silly now to say, but I guess because it wasn't culturally around me, it seemed like something, and I always said it I'm being drawn to one, but I think I'll just go to the hospital first time because you never know, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I was toying with the idea of it, but I thought maybe birth center was probably closest to that.
Yeah.
And Samson had an guesstimated date of December 25th.
Oh, wow.
So that already put me at you might not get into birth center anyway.
Yeah.
But then the high risk label that we got very quickly it was he's high risk.
Yeah.
So I didn't see a midwife or a normal obstetrician or anything at the tertiary hospital until I was 25 weeks because we were in the special maternal fetal unit.
Okay.
And we were just being monitored. I was going for scans every 2 weeks, and they were checking all his growth and the neurical fold, and they tried to push amniocentesis on us quite quickly, which obviously runs the risk of miscarriage anyway.
Yeah.
And
can you just I have a vague understanding of that. You might be able to give a better explanation of it though.
Yeah. So basically they put this very large needle straight through your tummy into the womb, and they take some of the amniotic fluid, and apparently I think it's similar to a nip test, but obviously more invasive and a lot further along.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to predict with 90-something% certainty whether they have a chromosomal issue like Down syndrome, which was what they kept saying was potentially what he had. And up until that point, we hadn't really received care that I would describe as respectful or informed consent at all.
Yeah, wow.
Obviously, we kept saying no to things, but we saw this specialist obstetrician, and she was lovely, and she said to me, what are you guys thinking? What is the plan here? And I was like, well, up until this point, everyone just keeps talking to us about termination, and we're really not on that wavelength at all. And she let me explain the previous losses and how that had made me feel. And I said to her, it doesn't matter to us. Anything that happens, we're okay with. Yeah. But we are not terminating this pregnancy for a chance that he might or might not. And she was like, cool, let's not do the amniocentesis. Let's not do any further testing. She was like, if it doesn't matter, then let's just go along. And if I can find out more information and we can make a better informed decision for you, then let's do that. So we did that with her, and she was brilliant.
Yeah.
And it got to about 26 weeks, and they dropped me down from high risk to normal or low risk.
Yeah.
And obviously I use those quotations because obviously to me it's all BS, but anyway. And then I got put into just the normal everyday tertiary hospital.
Yeah.
So fragmented care anyway, which actually her care was probably the most continuity of care I got when I was pregnant with Samson.
Yeah.
Which is saying something. Yeah. So I saw a midwife for the first time, and she was like, oh, well, let's get you up to speed. And they just did the normal fragmented care that they could. Yeah. You're waiting 4 hours to see someone for 10 minutes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And everyone kept talking about my due date, it was this big issue. So I knew we'd already been fighting for him. So I knew that I had a fight on my hands the whole time. And I really wanted to have the most uninterventional birth I could have with him.
Yeah.
So I did so much research, and I felt really equipped for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I did the research that you need, or I didn't have the mental equipment to deal with the bombardment and coercion that is the system.
Yeah.
Truly, I don't think you really can prepare for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can prepare to fight one person, right?
Yes.
But that's not the problem, because like you say, you have to get prepared to fight the entire system, and you're just one person.
Yeah, that's it. And they have a way of like wearing you or someone that you care about down as well. Like that was my experience anyway.
Yeah.
So we like were steadfast in what we wanted, and I got to like 40 weeks and 41 and 1. So we went in on Boxing Day, and the midwife, she was really like lovely.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes have like a thing about lovely midwives. They tend to be like really lovely, but not really lovely, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you seem to be like the good girl when they're so lovely to you, you know?
Yeah.
So
and you want to please them because they're being so nice to you. Yeah.
Yeah, so she was like, oh, do you want me to do a stretch and sweep? And I was like, I'm 41 and 1, like 40 and 1, sorry. I'm like, no. And she was like, okay, cool, just have to ask.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And she was like, these are the things you can do to like promote the baby coming. And I was like, okay. Anyway, so we just went through, and I think maybe like another week went past, and I went back in, and they were like, oh, you know, now you're like 41 and 1 or something. You need to come in regularly for CTGs just to check Bubs is okay. And I was like, okay, like it doesn't seem like too much to us. So we would go in. And the first time I went in, they were like, oh, you're 41 and 1. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, you haven't had your baby yet. And I was like, yeah, he seems fine, like not an issue. I took my mum to come with me because I was so heavily pregnant, and I was like, I don't want to drive myself. So she came, and I guess maybe between everyone sort of got the vibe, and they were like, we're just going to put you in a room, and we're going to do a side-by-side a bedside ultrasound of baby.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, we haven't seen him for ages, like that will be nice. And then they took us into the room. Obstetrician came in, and she was like, I cannot believe no one has scheduled for an induction yet. And I was like, what? And she was like, she basically just went full ball, like played the dead baby card. She was like, you know, your placenta can die, da, 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 da. And I was like, I know all those things aren't true. But she wasn't saying it to me, and it didn't affect me. She was saying it in the room, and it affected my mum hugely.
Yeah.
So my mum had issues with her placenta, and like I was born really little. I was like 2 weeks over, and I was like 4 pounds, and there was this whole big thing, and with her placenta and stuff, and it must have just triggered something in her.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'll give you a minute, but then I'm going to come back in, and we're going to book it in an induction.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. Anyway, my mum was like, Adelle, like you don't want them to, you know, induce you or something to happen, and you have to have an emergency cesarean. She had that with my sister, so the same placental issue. And then they had it was a true emergency with my sister. She was coming out. Her cord was like wrapped and whatever. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure, but it obviously put the fear of God in my mum. And she just like got so triggered, and she just dropped all this fear onto me. And I was like, oh my God, like what? Anyway, I guess I was tired, and like I guess I was sick of fighting, and I thought if I just say yes to this, then I can cancel it.
Yeah.
So we sat down, and she was like, when do you want to be induced? And I said, like, I'm not going to consider anything until 42 weeks. And she was like, Adelle, like your baby could die. Do you really want that? Like, do you really want to be responsible for that? And I was like, I feel confident that he's fine. And she was like, well, you'll have to come in every 2 days for CTGs. And I was like, whatever. Yep, sure. Book me in for 42 weeks. And my mum was like, you want the best opportunity you can, like just get induced, da, 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 da. And so they were both like at me. And I was like, I should have not brought you. But anyway.
Yeah.
And so, so we went in every 2 days, and then maybe like, I think I was like 41 and 5. So it was a couple of days later I went in with my husband, and they brought a new obstetrician in, and she was really lovely. And she was like, do you want to meet your baby today? And my husband was like, of course I want to meet my baby. And she was like, great, we've got a slot. We can fit you in. Like we could get your induction going today. And I was like, I think at that point I was like, I can't fight anymore.
Yeah. Oh my
I can't keep fighting. So we said yes, and I said to her, before I say yes, I want these are the things that I want respected. These are the things that I had as my like plan for birth. I said I wanted to use water. I didn't want to be on the monitor like strapped down. I wanted to be able to move and all of those things. And she was like, yeah, we can do all of that. Yep, absolutely. We can definitely do that. I'll put it in your notes, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So she like made out that it could be this beautiful experience of being induced. Yeah. Anyway, it wasn't. We waited another day because I got stuck in the hospital because there was obviously women that were having their babies, so I just kept getting pushed back. And I was like, why can't we go home? And that night, so I was there about 8 o'clock in the morning, about 8 o'clock at night, we were like, can we just go home? Like, there is no point me being here.
Yeah.
I want to go home. Like, maybe I could get into like natural labor myself. Like, maybe it'll be spontaneous, And she was like, well, you could go home, but then we'd have to start the whole process again. And it was so hard to get the cannula into your arm and And she just made it seem like it was like an inconvenience to them. And
so the dead baby card, but like only because it's convenient to them.
Yeah. I was like, okay, well, what should I do? And she was like, my suggestion is that you just stay and you send your husband home to get some sleep because he's really tired. And I was like, okay. So we did. And then once my husband left, they pushed me out of like labor ward or like in the delivery suite or whatever they called it there. And they put me into like a different unit down the hall. So I had to like carry all my bags and my birth ball and everything with me. And I got back into this new room and I just remember crying and I was like, you have kept saying yes to people and your whole body is screaming no. What are you doing?
So now you're by yourself in this new room.
Yeah, so now I was by myself and I couldn't sleep and this midwife came in and she was like, Adele, it's like 11:30 at night, like what's wrong? And I was like, can't sleep, I'm really anxious, I just want to go home. Like, she was like, it's okay, like they'll come and check you tomorrow. And I was like, I don't want to get checked, I want to go home. She was like, do you want me to give you something to sleep? And I was like, no, I don't want, like,
I want to go
a
home.
sedative, I want to go home. And she was like, oh, on your notes, like it mentioned that you have anxiety, so like maybe this is why. And I was like, no, I want to go home, I want to feel safe. Like,
how offensive. Oh
I know.
My gosh.
Anyway, so they were like, just stay. Like, it's so close. Anyway,
so
in the morning,
you hostage.
I know.
Basically. That's what it sounds like. You're like, I just want this one small thing. You're not doing anything anyway. What would you be doing? Like blood pressure checks or something?
Yeah, that's like, literally what they were doing. Like, there was no point me being there.
But only for the sake of like being able to document why you're taking up a bed. Like,
yeah, I don't know why they didn't send me home. Like, they obviously needed the beds, and like maybe I should have been more like pushy about it. But I think also, like, at that stage, I still fully trusted the system, and I obviously was like, it's obviously just me. Like, I just feel unsafe, you know? I just feel...
It's my anxiety.
Like, like maybe like gaslighting me, but also me gaslighting myself in a sense. Like, so then I messaged my husband in the morning. I was like, I can't sleep. It's horrible. I need you here. Like, I don't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
And the midwife came in, and she was the midwife that had helped me settle in the morning the day before. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you're still here. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to go home. And she was like, just let me check everything and make sure everything's okay. And then we can either like see what's happening or we can send you home. And I was like, I just want to have a shower too. Like, I'm disgusting. Like, I haven't been able to shower and I just feel gross. There's no food I can eat because I have celiac disease, and so I can't have the normal hospital food. No one offered anything else. And I was like, I'm over this. And she was like, I'm so sorry. So she let me have a shower and then let me have a shower. I had a shower and then
pretty much she let you have a shower.
Yeah. And then she checked so she asked if she could do like a cervical check. And I was like, okay. And she did a swab.
Yeah.
And she said that the swab came back with like leaking waters. And I said like I felt a little bit wet down there, but I just assumed it was like sweat and stuff because I hadn't had a shower.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I think it's like it's water. Your waters have gone. And she was like, that's really good. We can get you on like to your induction. And I was like, okay. I was hoping to go home.
Yeah.
But sure. And she was like, well, now that we know that, like, we can push you, up the list. And I was like, okay. And she just made out like it was this really good thing. And I just thought like, I just want to get this over with now. My body was like, just get it over with.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
Yeah.
And that's a point that I should have gone home, but I didn't. So yeah. But anyway, so we went in and we had the induction, and everything seemed really going reasonably well.
Yeah.
For maybe the first, like, I think it's from about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then by 8 o'clock at night, it was like manageable pain, but still like the usual. I had a midwife that I clicked with, and she did make the space really safe, and she didn't let anyone else in. And she was helping me with like acupressure, and she was like really encouraging. She said I could use water, and I was using the TENS machine, and she said she was charging the like the waterproof pads so that I could do that. And she tried to make as much room as possible while those were charging so that I could move around, and then she'd put those on and then they'd die and she'd have to charge them and stuff. So I used a little bit of gas and air because she was like, maybe that will take the edge off. So I'd use that, and it just like made me out of it for periods of time. So I have to stop using it. And then they said that Bubs was, I guess like there was too much Pentosanon or Syntocinon. Yeah. So because I had the drip.
The drip at this point.
Yeah. So I had the drip, and they'd broken my waters. Yeah. One time, and she'd like nicked me, and so that really hurt. And then she was like, oh, we'll take a break, and I think I've got them. And then maybe 2 hours later, they're like, oh, she's not in enough pain, like she's still talking. So she asked to check again, and she was like, no, there's more water. So she nicked them again, and there was more water that came, like my waters broke again. So she was like, oh, now it should really like kick up. And I was like, okay. And so about 8 o'clock at night, I was like in a little bit more pain, and I was like, can I jump in the shower? And she's like, oh, I'm just about to change shifts. So the new midwife's coming. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'd really enjoyed the space that we'd created. And then the new midwife came in, and it was the opposite. I didn't gel with her. She, within an hour or so, she was like, I want to check you. And I was like, okay. So she did a VE, and she was like, oh, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And I was like, I dislike you already. Like, why would you say it like that? And she was like, you're only 4 or 5 centimeters. You're not 7, because the other midwife had said I was like 7. And I said, oh, she said I was 7. She's like, no, I think you've gone behind. Like, it's actually wrong. Like, you're only like 5 or 4 or 5.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, how about an epidural? And I was like, I don't want an epidural. Like, read the notes and the birth plan and, all that. And she was like, okay, well, it's just that you seem to be uncomfortable. So, it might be easier. Anyway, she was like dead against me using the water. And so every time I asked to jump in the shower, she'd be like, oh, they're not charged. And I was like, well, could you find some that are charged? And she was like, there's none on the ward, da-da-da-da-da. And I kept making excuses up.
Yeah. And this whole time, I mean, it's like, it's just like the fight. I don't think mums who, are birthing in hospitals understand that it's not just the fight. You're 41 weeks. You're so pregnant. You're in labor and also having to fight.
Yes. Like, yeah.
So it's not just, the system that you're fighting just like that, Yeah. You're meant to be in this really like safe, like chill, relaxed, oxytocin vibe thing. Yeah. Yeah. But now you're pissed off at the midwife because she's being a troll and won't let you have the movable, cordless CTG. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, I know. And also, like, I think obviously my body wasn't ready either, right? So my body is fighting against something that's unnatural, and my body's like, hang on a second. And so everything, like you said, like it all culminated into this really uncomfortable, like, my body had 2 choices. I can keep fighting and really seriously like just resent everything that's going on, or I can just shut down. Yeah. And I think it got to the point around like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning where I was like, I just want this to be over. I just want to leave this room and now go and start my life with my baby. Yeah. And she kept like saying like, oh, he's stargazing and da-da-da-da-da. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I assumed he was like posterior. Yeah, his position was like, back. We were back to back sort of thing. Yeah. Or spine to spine or whatever. Yeah. And so like his position wasn't optimal or whatever, but she basically was like, your only option is an epidural. And I was like, can you help me with some different positions? If he is like, is there something I can do to help? I know that positions are really important. And just trying to get some sort of like support from her, because my husband was at the point where he didn't really know what else to do, but he knew that it wasn't going well. And I had a friend there and she was also trying, and like everyone was trying to just like will this baby out. Yeah. And it just wasn't working. And I was like looking to her as like this woman who's supposed to be with women. Yeah. And she was like not interested. She was like on the computer and just looking back and being like, you're right, hun, just breathe through them. And I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going
she's
on.
waiting for the donuts to finish on their, on their thingo. Oh, my gosh.
So I just was like, this is not going well. And she just kept doing like VEs, and she just kept saying the same thing. You're, this many centimeters, you're not progressing. Maybe an epidural will relax you. Maybe this, maybe that. I kept asking for a shower, and she kept saying no.
Yeah.
And then she was like, do you want to have an epidural? And I was like, yeah, just whatever. Like at this point, whatever. Like I don't know. Yeah, I'll just let's just get this over with.
Yeah.
And then she said to me, you can have a shower now. And I was like, I hate you. What? Because I've been a good girl now, and now I'm doing what you want. Now I get the reward of a shower. And I got in the shower, and I just started like bawling my eyes out. And I'm saying to my friend, like, this is not what I want. This isn't what I want at all. And now I get to have what I wanted. And the only reason I get to have that is because I'm doing what she wants me to do, which is quieten down for her night shift. Like the whole thing felt just so coercive, and like she just got me at the right vulnerable time and wore me down. And I knew that this was the end of what I wanted in my birth, because everything had been stripped away from me to the point where it wasn't what I wanted. It didn't look like how I wanted it to look.
Yeah.
And now I just had to get through whatever happened. But I knew I was headed for a cesarean. I just knew, because I knew that I was on timer. I knew that the epidural was going to get me lying down. I knew that there was no gravity, all the things. I knew all those things, and I just had to sort of let it happen. Yeah.
Did you do like birth education stuff during your pregnancy, or?
So I did, but we did the hospital one first.
Yeah.
And like it was quite positive, but it didn't tell you anything like, it didn't give you any like preparation for, if you take this pain relief, this is what happens,
Yeah.
It was just sort of like, these are your options.
Okay,
and
but
these,
not like the pro-con risks.
No, and like, this is what happens if you have a cesarean, and all. It didn't go into any of that. It just went into, this is your best opportunity to have a natural birth. Here are the things. Yeah. These are some of the things you could do. And it was a lot of like baby care and stuff.
Yeah.
So I did like my own research, and I knew about the cascade of intervention. I knew about the risks of epidural and all of those sorts of things. But when I was in it right then and there, because I had been mentally grained down and like just everything had been stripped, I wasn't thinking like, weighing up the risks and the pros of it,
Yeah.
I didn't have the capacity to do that at that time. And so then when they asked me to sign that thing, I was like, I can't even see my own eyes. I was so doped up, and I was in so much pain. And I actually remember saying to my husband, like, I don't think that's my signature. And he was like, I don't think they really give a shit. Like, they just want someone to sign it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So I gave them that, and then they did the epidural, and they did they said, we'll do an epidural and we'll see what happens. And then like a couple of hours later, they came in and checked, and they were like, you're still 5 centimeters. And I was like, well, there's nothing happening. I can feel everything on this side. And I'm lying on my back, and I'm like, there's a lot of pain because they pushed up the Syntocin drip and stuff. And one side felt like it was going to explode. And I kept saying that to the midwife, and she was like, you're not in that much pain, hon. Like, just calm down. And I was like, I am. Like, I'm in so much pain. I was like, I honestly feel like my vagina is going to explode, and my insides.
Did she actually say that? That you weren't in that much pain?
She did.
Oh,
and
my God.
And after I said that to her, she like got right close in my face, and she was like, I don't know what you want me to do for you, Adelle. I'm trying hard, and you're just being ridiculous. And I was like, at that point, I like lost it. I started like hysterically screaming, and then
person.
I know. And then she was like, "Do you want like something to calm your anxiety?" So they brought the anxiety thing up again because it was all through my notes. And then I started screaming, and I was like, "Get away from me!" And I woke my husband up because he was having a little nap. And I said to him, "They're not listening to me. Like, I'm in so much pain." And he was like, "If she's in pain, why are you not doing anything?" And she was like, "Well, she says she's in pain, but like I don't think she really understands. Like the epidural doesn't always work properly." Ash was like, my husband was like, I don't care. you get the anaesthetist back in. If she's in pain, you told her to have an epidural and now she's not relaxed.
Yeah.
So you fix it. So then she came in and did like this ice test and she was like, oh, yeah, it's not working on the whole right side. So then they got him, the anaesthetist, to come back in and then he doped it up so much.
So silly because the ice test basically like is checking like the level to which, you know, the epidural is working to. But you've already said, I can feel it. So like, you could have said anything on the ice test, but you've already basically said it. Why did she need to go get a bloody block of ice?
I don't know, but she did.
Stupid.
And then my husband was like, well, if you're happy now, could you get someone to fix it? So they did. And then they doped me up so much that I couldn't feel like anything from like neck down. And so, yeah, I think my body just sort of shut down and I didn't feel safe. My body was like, it doesn't matter how much drugs you're pumping, it's full.
I am not
She's not doing anything. Like nothing is happening. So about like 4:00 in the morning or something, the OB came in who was on rotation or whatever, and she checked again and was like, oh, yes, you're still 4 or 5 centimeters. I think it's best we go for cesarean. And I was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's do it now. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, cool, you're going to meet your baby. And I was like, I'm not excited. I just want you to cut me open and take my baby out and give him to me so I can go home. Like that is all that was in my head.
Yeah.
There was nothing like exciting about it. There was no like I thought I was going to die when I got on the table, but there was no like a relief of like, oh, you're going to have your baby. It was just pure relief that I could leave. Like, do you know what I mean? Even if it was in a couple of days, it was just get me out of this room with these people that I don't feel safe with.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And we had the cesarean and the midwife that was in there with me was beautiful. She was like rubbing my head and she told my husband that I was scared that I was going to die. And she was like, you're not going to die. Me and Ash are here. And they were both so gentle. And that was, again, one of the only other times that I felt safe with someone and I didn't even know her. There was no relationship, but she just gave that little bit of like, I've got you, you're okay, we're not going to let anything happen. Yeah. And so that was great. And they showed me Samson, they dropped the sheet and I was like, okay, like I feel nothing. Like I just want him now so you can leave me alone. Yeah. And then we did and we had skin to skin and whatever and the hospital stay was horrible because I just wanted to go home. Yeah. So, it was not anything I pictured. It was the opposite. Yeah. But, I mean, that's just how it is.
Oh, my goodness. And so because you said, how old's Atticus?
So Atticus is 18 months.
18 months. Okay. And so after you had Samson, like, you know, because when you said that you went in and you kind of thought that you weren't like fully, I guess, committed to the idea that the system was working against you, I guess.
Yes.
For most people, you know, we are brought up to believe that the system is there to help us. So, like, getting rid of that belief, you know, it takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
Like, what was that reflection process like after Samson? Like, you know, obviously there's a smallish gap between Atticus and Samson. You know, did you – because I've interviewed other mums where, you know, they've said, like, as soon as they were wheeling me out of the C-section, I was like, I am not doing that again. Like, that's not how it's going to be next time. I'm 100%. Never coming back again. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that was
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. I literally – it was immediately was like this – I will never step foot in this hospital again. Yeah. And I won't step foot in any hospital again. I think that's what it was for me. And maybe like a couple of months after I started researching VBAC and private midwives in our area and all of that sort of stuff, home birth, that was the only option if I was ever going to have a baby again. And I did want to have another baby. Yeah. But I knew that I had to work on myself because I had so much birth trauma from the whole experience and I was over like stimulated constantly. I was having nightmares. I was having flashbacks. I didn't want to be left alone with Samson. I didn't want my husband to leave the house. I didn't want to be by myself, but I didn't want other people around. It was like there was just so much like emotion and feelings that were coming up. And so I had to engage with a birth trauma and perinatal specialist counsellor here in Perth. And I did, and her name's Fiona Rogerson, and she's incredible. She works with lots of women here, and it was the best thing I did because I was able to clear so much of the heavy, dark cloud that was overhanging from this birth and really be able to focus in on like loving my body again and being confident in my body again and reclaiming all the power that was taken from me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that with her, and I still see her now because she's just bloody incredible. Yeah. But yes, I got to, when I fell pregnant with Atticus, or when we decided to try, it was a close gap. There was like, I think Samson was 9 months or something, but I was so determined that I wanted to do it differently this time, and I had already started feeling so much better, and we wanted a close gap. Yeah. So I just thought, like, why the heck not? Why would we not do that?
Yeah. And what also frustrates me is that, you know, when they say like, oh, you know, it's 4 a.m, you should go have a C-section. They're not also there being like, and these are the lists of risks of future pregnancies, of your future health, you know, like they don't tell you those things.
No, they don't. They don't. They say nothing. No. Like they say nothing. And like I got my birth notes before before I had Atticus, and not because my midwife needed them. My private midwife didn't need them, but she was like, "It's a really good thing for you to have." Yeah. She was like, "Just because they are your notes, but also," she was like, "A lot of women really get like a little bit of extra, like almost like F you when they read them for empowering themselves." And like she was like, "I think that you're at the point where that's okay for you to do. It's obviously can be really traumatic for some women, but." I read it, and like I didn't realize that they could take your uterus out, and you've signed that away. Like if you need a hysterectomy, and no one explained that to me, and obviously I didn't, thankfully. But like, what if I had? Like, you just taken the opportunity for me to have another child away, and I didn't even realize because I was so doped up. Like the level of consent in a hospital is like it's non-existent. Yeah. You know.
That's just like absolutely crazy. And so did you have any so obviously because in Perth there is a publicly funded home birth program, right?
But you're disqualified if you have a VBAC.
Yeah, also they wouldn't tell you that either, I bet.
No, they don't. Family birth centre as well. So family birth centre you're not allowed to. So you're classed as high risk in Perth if you've had a VBAC. And there's no way of getting out of high risk. In that way. So you can go. They had an NBAC clinic, I think, at the tertiary hospital here, and some of the other clinics they do like promote VBAC, but there's only like a couple of hospitals that have like good-ish results for VBACs. But I wasn't interested in even like entertaining that. I did say to my husband, like, I'm about to take a pregnancy test, but I just need your 100% support on a home birth, and he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, just before I pee on the stick, I mean, we are or we aren't anyway. But I need your verbal confirmation on that, you know, like a gentleman's agreement. And he was like, okay. And I came out and I was like, we're having a home birth. And he was like, oh, yay. Also, holy shit, we're about to have 2 kids. And I was like, and obviously I acknowledge that not every woman is able to afford a private midwife. Like it costs $7,000 and Medicare maybe gives you back between $1,700 to $2,000, and still you've got to take it out of pocket first. But we had a payment plan with our midwife, and we're not like, I wouldn't say that we were a high income family at all, but I made it a priority. So I went through my whole budget and we completely obliterated things that I didn't think were important for me right now, being pregnant, and we put the money towards that. And then we used a bulk of our tax, both of our tax, to pay off the rest. And so I understand that there is a level of privilege there, but I also think I worked bloody hard to make sure that happened for us. And I think, you know, you spend more than $7,000 on a car, but like people are like, oh, that's just so expensive. I'm like, yeah, but we are where we are, right? You pay for it or you don't. And if you can't get into the community midwifery program for home birth, then that is really your only option. So we made it happen. And I'm really proud that we did, because I would never birth any other way. And so did you like have trouble finding a private midwife that said that they would support you, or it was pretty easy? It was really easy. I did think that I would have an issue. I don't know why. I guess I did. There's not really much like research or like information out there about, who take on VBACs and who don't. But I did email like a couple of people from the list that I'd been researching for a couple of months. And I did ask in my email, like, do you support VBAC and what are the sort of like, if I go over term and all the things about supporting my VBAC. And a couple of them got back to me with like really generic things. And the midwife that I picked emailed me back and she was like, Adelle, I will 100% take on anyone. She was like, I'm free in 10 minutes. I'm going to give you a call and let's talk through it.
Wow.
And I like immediately clicked with her because I was like, yes, this is my midwife. Like, she listened to my birth story and she like explained some of the things and like really just like sat with me in it for like her 10 minutes between clients, and I was like, this is my midwife. Like, and there was never any question about the VBAC. Like, there was no like, these are the risks of your uterine rupture. She emailed me some information about it and she was like, you do your own research. I'm happy to answer any questions you want, but ultimately it's not a discussion. It's not really up for discussion. We don't need to. So, I didn't have any issues with it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And so it took like no real convincing to get your husband on board. He was just like, okay.
No, he was like, you do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'll support you. Obviously he was like a smidge apprehensive just because I guess it's not the norm for most people.
Yeah.
But he, knew how traumatizing the hospital birth was with my son. He knew how much I desired to have a vaginal birth.
Yeah.
And we watched birth time together.
Yeah, amazing.
He met my midwife with me for that first coffee catch up. And after that, he was like, just that pure experience. I always say to people, like, go and just have that coffee with the midwife because they come to your house and they play with your toddler, or if you don't have a kid, you know what I mean? And you realize, like, my husband was just like, like, I'm in the comfort of my own home and we're talking about birthing in this room potentially. Yeah. And I don't know, just everything that he had worries, and there wasn't too much, but any worry he had was like alleviated with the conversations that we had. And she spent a couple of hours with us and we had cups of tea and everyone was laughing. And I think that made him realize, like, that's what you want. You want someone to walk through the pregnancy with you, right? You don't want to sit in a room for 4 hours for 10 minutes with someone and some obstetrician not even look up at you and be like, cool, no worries, bye, which is what our experience was.
And in 5 minutes' time, they won't even remember your name. Like.
Yeah. That's what our experience was together at the hospital. So he was like, holy crap, well, of course we're doing this.
Yeah. Amazing. And did you decline any particular tests or like do anything different in this pregnancy?
Yeah, so this pregnancy I didn't do the GBT? Blood glucose test because I did it last time. There was no issues, and also it's a horrible test. Yeah. And I'd done research on like other countries that don't even do it mandatorily and all of that sort of stuff. And I felt comfortable doing that. We monitored my blood sugar and there was a couple of spikes. We investigated it, deep dived it, and realized that it was the gluten-free substitutes that I had in my diet.
Of course.
So
celiac.
Yeah. And there's so much sugar in that stuff. So we eliminated that from my diet and then we monitored for a couple of weeks and my midwife was really happy with it. So, and that was my decision. She offered it. She said that's another option and I went with it because I thought like, okay, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And it actually benefited me greatly because I was way less tired.
Yeah.
And then I didn't take the anti-D because I have rhesus negative blood.
Yeah.
Took it the first time with Samson and Samson has rhesus D negative blood. So we were like, no, we're good for that. I didn't do that. And we only did a 12-week scan and the 24-week scan. Yeah. Didn't do any other scans. And I had been offered, she did say if I was worried about my scar anytime we could like check, but she did also say to me like that's not something that she does routinely. It was that I'd had a dream about my scar bursting.
Okay.
But she did put me in touch with a scar healer here in Perth, which her name's Gigi and she was like, she's amazing too. Cool. There was lots of alternative options rather than just like the normal tests. Yeah. But I don't think there was anything else. Oh, I didn't do the swab. Yeah. The strep.
GBS.
Yeah, for GBS. I didn't do that because I didn't feel that I needed to either. Yeah. So, we just rejected those sorts of things. Yeah. And we obviously, I didn't do what's the one? Oh, no, the antibiotics. Oh, they gave me antibiotics when I was in the hospital with Samson. I don't know why, but they did. But
because I reckon they would have maybe argued that they didn't know when your waters had broken.
Yes, that's right. Like, yes.
Now you've got prolonged rupture of membrane.
Yes, yeah. So that's why, because I remember arguing with them about it. I said I didn't want it, and they said to me it was happening whether I wanted it or not. So I was very like in my. So
oh my God, what a horrible people.
I know. So yeah, there were the things that we declined in that pregnancy.
And did you do any like different obviously you didn't go to the hospital education again, but did you do any other formal education stuff?
Yes, I did. So I did the naked doula course. She's from the UK.
Is she the one with the really cool infographics and stuff?
Yes, yeah. So I did her course, and she has an app and everything. It's really amazing. And it wasn't so much for like, I knew most of the stuff that she was talking about in terms of education, but it was also about, she does a huge part of hers is like mindset and I guess like hypnobirthing, but also mindset with like pain and how you can really restructure that in your brain using, sense and sound and all of those sorts of things. So I guess like hypnobirthing, but she just does it in a really cool, like, down to earth way, and I really, really liked it. And my husband did it with me, and I think that also helped him. Yeah. And she does like a lot of fear release and stuff, which really was good for us as well. And just like body empowerment and like loving your body and like feeling yourself, which I think I needed, because I guess I had this story of your body failed, we helped you so much and you still failed. Yeah. In my head, I had to really like work through that as well. Yeah. So I did that, and I also saw my counsellor all the time, and we did a sensitive birth plan together, which helped me really get down if I did need a hospital transfer or for any reason something had veered from the normal, that I could be protected still with my private midwife. Yeah. And I saw an acupuncturist, and she's a Chinese medicine practitioner, and she's also a midwife. Oh, cool. So I did lots of stuff with her about pressure points and I guess just like more fear release and like meditation and stuff. Yeah. Which isn't so much like formal education, but I was seeing her, and so we did lots and lots of stuff, and she really like changed the game for me, like mentally and stuff, which was awesome. So I did lots and lots of body work this time, and I think it really played a big part in how prepared I was mentally for the game that birth is. Yeah.
Did you have any like, or was it ever the fear placed on you about, that shorter, I guess in some respects, duration between Samson and Atticus?
No, never. That was never ever discussed. Yeah, not by any of my birth team. Yeah. People around me, sure.
Yeah, because everybody thinks they know better than you, right?
Yeah, yeah. There was obviously a lot.
Send the baby back. Like,
yeah. It's done now. Like, yeah, there was lots of that. But I think for me, I think I'd done so much work. I just knew that was like their own fears just bouncing off of them. So yeah. Not by my birth team, never. It was never ever discussed.
Yeah. I've had a couple of people on from Perth, but I don't think I've ever asked this. Like, is there much of a home birth community in Perth? Like, did you connect with other home birth mums during this time?
Yeah. So we have a home birth Facebook page here, and it's run by a doula and a birth photographer. Yeah. And she does birth circles here in Perth, and there is a really big, I think, community of women that are turning to home birth, first time mums, and then lots of VBAC mums. Yeah. And so there was lots of women that I reached out to, and Ashley Winning's VBAC home birth group, I joined there as well, and that was a great resource as well to have, because you just get to share with other women and like people, you ask questions, and it just feels like a really safe community. So I think I would say that there's quite a big home birth community here, and I think a couple of things play into that. I think lockdowns here were, and I'm sure they were everywhere else, but here we had, obviously people were birthing by themselves without their partners, and I'm sure that happened everywhere in Australia, but it seemed like a lot more people that weren't probably interested in home birth before started looking at that as a serious option. And so I think it's quite a big movement of women, especially now. So
No, it's quite similar, I think, in Melbourne as well, especially with COVID and stuff. hospital was not the place you wanted to be, of course.
No, absolutely
well, I feel
not.
like lots of people didn't. I can't understand the logic of wanting to be birthing like normally, physiologically, in a place where it's all of the sick people.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it's amazing for promoting like women's choice, because I think about this so much. Like, home birth isn't for everyone. That's not what anyone's saying. But everyone should know that, it's a totally legitimate option.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
Right now it's, in some circles, in lots of circles still, it's still like this hippie, like weird alternative, really risky weird thing.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that when I told everyone. Like, apart from my grandma, she was 100% on board, which is so funny because she's in her 80s and she's like, girl, you get it. Like, this is the best. She had my uncle in hospital, first one, and then she had my dad and my other uncle at home.
Wow.
So she knows the difference, and she was like, it was incredible for her physiologically as well.
Yeah.
So she was so on board, but obviously, like, a lot of other people were like, oh my God. My cousin said this really interesting thing to me, and she said to me, why would you want to birth at home and have the most traumatic experience in a place that you feel safe? And I said to her, like, I think you're getting it mixed up. My experience is the most traumatic place is the hospital where I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any traumatic experience at home because I feel safe there. And she was like, huh?
Yeah.
It was like this whole thing.
Yeah.
It was just so interesting that she said that to me, and it was like, birth is always traumatic. And I was like, I don't know if there's women, not everyone agrees with you there. You know what I mean? It was just so interesting that she said that. And so she assumes that you would bring that trauma into your house. And I was like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work that way for me.
It's not going to be like that. So tell us about like the lead up to having Atticus then.
Yeah. So we prepared our birth space. We moved our couch out. I wanted to birth in the pool.
Yeah.
So we set up like our theatre room, I guess, with like lights, and my husband strung all these like twinkle lights everywhere for us, and we moved everything out, and we had like the birth ball, and I had like affirmations up. I had pictures up of all of our family. My husband's mum and dad came from the UK, and they came to stay with us, and they were going to take Samson on a like staycation while we had the baby, and we were just really excited. Started having like prodromal labor, and I was getting really excited, and it would fizzle and would start and it would fizzle, and we just like kept trying to watch as many oxytocin filled movies as possible, and I was eating like dates because I was like, yep, let's go. I know that none of that stuff actually like really potentially could work, but I was like, I just enjoyed the date boats, I loved the peanut butter with the dates, and they were frozen and it was really hot, so I was like, yep, let's go. We were just doing as much fun stuff as we could and not putting any pressure on it. And I had an acupuncture appointment on his guesstimated date. And I went, and she was like, we're just going to make you feel like a goddess today because this is your like goddess starting day. And I was like, yeah, I am a goddess, because that was like my mantra every time we did like meditation and release after my acupuncture. It would be like, you're a birthing goddess. So she was like, yep, you're a goddess. Like, we're opening the chapter of goddess phase right now. So I had this like incredible hour and a half at her house, and I could feel like something niggling, and I was like, just ignore it. Like, go home. We had a fun day planned with Samson. We were like, this is, our last family day maybe as three. So we just soaked it all up. And then the prodromal labor kept happening. Like, it would ramp up towards like 10 o'clock, and then I'd wake up the next day and be like, nothing. And then that went on till like maybe Wednesday, and
How
my
many
midwife
weeks
came in.
might have you been?
I think I was 40 and 2 or something. Like, it wasn't serious. Like, no one should have been getting excited, and I was like trying to chill, but also I was like, ugh. And my midwife is like, look, my suggestion would be ask your parents-in-law to take Samson on the staycation now. She was like, worst case scenario, you and Ash have a couple of days together, just the two of you, which is really lovely. Best case scenario, you feel safe enough that you're in the cave and baby is also in the cave being looked after, and you can fully move in to your space that you need to get into. And I was like, okay. because that was like, I kept having like worry about him waking up in the middle of the night and crying and not knowing where I was and all that sort of stuff. So we did the plan. I packed his bag. We said goodbye to him. He was so excited. He got to stay at Crown, and like they like fully just doted on him. Yeah, he was
Staycation.
Gosh. He got a real serious 5-star resort sort of staycation from his grandparents. So bless him. He was having the time of his life. Yeah. I had to bawl my eyes out in the shower because that's the first time he's left me. And that's okay. I needed to do that. Yeah. And then we went to the shops. We stocked up on everything. I could feel like more like intense sort of like surges coming. Yeah. And I had to stop a couple of times and breathe through them at the shops. And I was like, okay, this might be happening, but try and ignore it, Adelle. You know, ignore it till you can't anymore. Yeah. And we got home, put on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I was like, right, like it's go time, bouncing on the ball, just trying to like sway or keep moving. And then my husband was like, probably about 9, was like, let's jump into bed, get like a nice sleep. Yeah. Samson's not here. Yeah. And we co-sleep. So, you know, it was the first time that he could sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say spread out, but like at 40 weeks pregnant, there's probably not a lot of spreading out.
No, there wasn't, but that's okay. So I got into bed, and then probably around 2, I probably couldn't ignore them anymore. Yeah. The surges were coming quite intensely. So I jumped out, got in the shower, let Ash sleep because I was like, it's kind of nice. My midwife was like, it's really nice to go inward and give yourself that space before anyone else gets there. Yeah. So that's what I did. And I was in the shower for a couple of hours, and then I was like, I don't know if I can do this by myself anymore. So I woke Ash up, and I was like, I need some help. So he put some hot packs together. We made like big wheat bags made out of pillows.
Yeah, okay.
And so that they could go across the whole front and the whole back, because I was having like back labor and front. Yeah. So he did that, and he's like, do you want me to ring the midwife? And I was like, absolutely not. I don't think this is serious yet. She's just going to go home, and I will not send her home. Yeah, he was like, are you sure? And I was like, nope, I'll get back in the shower. So I got back in the shower, and then came out the shower and had the heat packs again. And I was like, just trying to find a comfortable position. I was like swaying and using like just anything I could grasp onto. And he was like, you're like making different kinds of noises. And I was like, no, I'm not. He was like, I'm going to call her. And I was like, don't you dare call her. And he was like, I'm just going to call and I'm just going to let her know. Anyway, he rang her, and she's like, is Adelle asking for me? He's like, no, she's not. He's like, but I think you need to come. Yeah. And I guess in that moment I had to trust that he knew what was happening more than I knew what was happening, and that's what his role was to do. So I did have to trust him in that. And she got here about maybe 45 minutes later, and I could talk through like in between the surges. So I thought like, I must not be like serious. Maybe I just can't tolerate the pain because I couldn't in the hospital. Yeah. And it was a different kind of pain. It was nowhere near as horrible as the, craziness that Syntocin drip was. But it was like quite intense. And then I heard her pull up and her car door close, and I heard her come inside, and my whole body just like shifted. Okay. And I just felt like this really relaxed, but also like, I can do this. Yeah. Like it was so weird. And she put her hand on my back, and I was like, yep, we're going. This is serious. It's happening. It was so good. Yeah, it was so good. And it was so nice because it was a beautiful juxtaposition to the first birth that I'd had. I didn't have anyone that I trusted and loved and that I deeply felt connected to. And she got here, and I was like, I feel like almost like so held. My husband's doing a great job, but there's nothing like being held by another woman, I feel. In that moment, and it was just so lovely. Yeah. And I knew that this was happening now. And then maybe, I don't know how long after, but she was like, Ash is filling up the birth pool and we're going to move into it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have this baby in a birth pool. Yeah. I'd been like dreaming and manifesting this in my mind for like 9 months. And I was like, just the pure fact I get to go into the water when I want. Yeah. When I've been dreaming of this, I was like, this is an achievement in itself. Absolutely. Yeah. So we got in the pool, and I just loved being in the pool because it was an element of weightlessness, but also like my body felt like, again, it took another level of like, okay, like this is really going to happen now. Yeah. And I just really felt in tune with myself. I felt so much in control of my body, and no one was touching me, and no one was telling me what to do, and no one was like telling me, you know, that I should have to get on the bed and, you know, like now we have to check you or you can't do this. Like no one did anything. No one touched me unless I asked them to, or they said, can I touch you? You know what I mean? It was all full. It was my whole autonomy in my own body. It was like so different and so amazing. And then a couple of hours later, like he crowned and he was out and I was like, oh my God, I fucking did it.
Whoa.
I did it, you know? Because I didn't have that experience before.
Yeah.
It didn't get to go through all of that. And to birth your baby, I think, is such an amazing rite of passage.
Yeah.
And I really, really desired it in the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
For me, that was.
Yeah. Did you have like a crisis of confidence at some point?
I think I did. So he was sort of doing that rocking it up and down on my pelvic bone.
Okay.
Or my pubic bone, sorry.
Yeah.
And he would come down and then I could feel him go up a little bit.
Oh, wow.
And he would like come down and sort of stretch my perineum and then sort of go back up again. Yeah. And I said to my midwife, like, why isn't he coming down? And she was like, Adelle, he is doing exactly what he needs to do. Yeah. She was like, that stretch is exactly what you need to happen. Yeah. She's like, your body and that baby are communicating perfectly and don't think that that's not what's supposed to happen. Yeah. She was like, this is absolutely physiologically appropriate for your body. Yeah. And I was like, wow. Okay. But I did kind of feel that because I was like, why can't I not do this? Yeah. And it was that like panic of like, I don't know if I can push this baby out. Obviously it's not happening. And she was like, just go with it. Yeah. And he did obviously come out, but yeah, it was that a tiny bit of like, oh, I don't know if I can.
Yeah. When he was like coming out, did you do your own like check or like, do you remember like when you first like touched his head?
Yeah, so I had felt him all the way as I could feel him coming down when I did have that crisis of faith sort of thing. Yeah. She was like, if you feel comfortable, like go on and have a feel and check where he is. So I put my finger in and I could feel hair and I was like, oh my God. And so I sort of kept my like hand there the whole time because it would like sort of spurred me on every time I was a bit worried. I would just sort of check, make sure he's there and then I could feel like more and more head and I was like, oh, I don't know. It's such a weird, cool feeling, isn't it? Yeah. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I loved being able to feel in control of my own body even in that sense, you know? So it was the most incredible experience I've ever had, I think.
And so then so then he was born into the water and you like picked him up.
Yeah, I picked him up and scooped him onto my chest and my midwife helped me like just keep him there because I think I was a little bit like, with all the emotion. My husband was there and he like they had their hands on my hand. No one ever like touched the baby. Yeah. Because that was a really important thing for me as well.
Yeah, of course.
And so we all just sort of sat there together, the three of us, and they had their hand on my hand and on my shoulders, and they were both like, "You did it!" And I was like, "I really did do it! Wow. I can't believe it!"
Wow.
Yeah.
And so Samson's still on his staycation, right?
Yes. Yeah. Loving his life. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so, so there's the two midwives, your husband, and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anybody else?
No, just us, yeah.
Wow. And so after he's born, did you stay in the pool for long or?
Yeah, so I did. I stayed in the pool for, I think it was probably about an hour maybe.
Yeah.
So initially like I had like the contractions for my placenta. Yeah. And I guess I think I knew instinctively that I had torn.
Yeah.
And I was feeling quite sore and I didn't really want to like give it a little bit of a push. Yeah. And so I sort of just like stayed there in it for a bit. And my midwife was like, look, you totally are fine to stay in the pool. She's like, but if you would like to, we can like sort of jump out and see if that helps with gravity. Yeah. And so I stood up and I was like, I feel lightheaded. And she put me straight back down. She was like, okay, let's just chill for a bit. Yeah. So they took some water out, put more warm water in for me and Atticus. Yeah. And we just stayed in there for like 2 hours. And then eventually she was like, whenever you're ready, like just give it a push. Like you don't have to, you can take your time. And so about 2 hours after he was born, I birthed a placenta. Wow. Yeah. And then that just sort of like sat in the bowl with us for a while. Yeah. And then we slowly like tied cut the cord and tied the knot and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it was like a really relaxing time that was not stressful in any way.
Yeah. Wow. And just like such a contrast to your first experience and like even, you know, even being like not pressured to like birth the placenta like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. I don't know. There wouldn't be a lot of women in Australia that have been allowed to, you know, have that time, you know, especially like mostly in a hospital setting, because like they're on such a rigid schedule. Wow. And yeah, oh my gosh, like I just like such a contrast.
Yeah, it really is. Hey,
very magical. And did that sort of like heal things that had come up with like Samson's birth then? Like
I don't think it healed it. I think I had done a lot of healing myself.
Yeah.
I think what it did do is it helped me reclaim the power that I had taken off of me in a sense. And I guess that maybe is a healing, but I never wanted to put that much pressure on that birth to heal like the first birth, because that's so much pressure.
Yeah. That's a really good
but
point.
I do think it was redemptive in so many ways.
Yeah.
And I think it did heal the part of me that thought the narrative that I am broken and I needed help.
Yeah. And your body couldn't do it.
Yeah, my body couldn't do it. So in a way, I guess there is a sense of healing.
Yeah.
But it was really redemptive, and it was a real like, I will reclaim my body and my autonomy and my birth and my baby.
Yeah.
And also my vagina, because no one did anything except me to my vagina. And that's like a vast contrast as well, because every 2 hours someone was sticking their fingers inside me, and also then the student midwife too. So it was like,
oh my gosh,
I had so much almost like trauma from that, you know, so that was a big thing for me. So yeah, there was so much that I was able to reclaim back that was stripped from me the first time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, personally, I have found on this journey working with my counsellor, I don't think I will ever fully heal from that birth. There will still be things that come up.
Yeah.
But that birth did heal and did give me a lot that I had taken from me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, can you speak to like how your postpartum has sort of been with Atticus in comparison to with Samson?
Yeah, it's like a vast difference.
Yeah.
Exactly the same as the births. I think that it was the polar opposite. It was such a gentle, soft landing into postpartum.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, I had got out the pool and I got into bed, and my midwife like just sat with us, and she was there like for 5 or 6 hours after the birth. And then, you know, it was just even those couple of like just having the baby on me the whole time. That was a huge thing too, because at the hospital they just put Samson into a cot like next to me, and you just, for some reason I didn't think like, just pick him up. You know? And like we had my parents-in-law here, so there was like people, my mother-in-law is Hindu, and she cooks the most beautiful like khichdi, and she cooked all these warming soups and hot meals, and we had, you know, her and my father-in-law cleaning the house and looking after Samson, and my brother-in-law came too, and he was running around with Samson, and so Ash and I could just sit in this bubble with this new baby. So this postpartum was the best postpartum I think I could have ever imagined for, you know. It was so exactly how I'm sure it's supposed to be intended. And what I needed. Yeah. Because that first postpartum was horrendous. And I didn't feel like scared or worried or anything. It was almost like I was like, no, do leave me alone, because I can do this. And everyone was like, we're not leaving you alone. We're creating this safe bubble around you. And I was like, yeah, but if I wanted you to, I could do it by myself, you know? It was almost like that, you know, like I had so much more power and like confidence in myself.
Yeah, well, it's your house and it's your space. What you say goes. Have you had a chance to talk to your cousin about it?
Yeah, I have. And she actually said to me, she's not going to have another baby, but if she did, she would consider having a home birth.
Wow. There you go. I thought, you got the cogs turning, and that's a win.
And so, and actually one of my other cousins had a VBAC about 2 months before I did with Atticus, and she has said that her next birth will be at home.
Wow.
So, yeah. So that. I'm like starting to to spread the glitter.
Influencer. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. Do you have anything else that we haven't talked about or anything you'd like to say? Or
I don't know. I think probably the biggest thing that I wanted to say was I don't think that home birth is for everyone, but I do think that you should remember that the safest place for you to give birth is the place that you feel safest.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is any there is correlation between that.
Yeah.
And women have been giving birth at home for thousands and thousands of years before us, and I think that's something that we should pay attention to.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so, so much.
That's all right. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this this podcast, because I honestly love it. I love listening to all of the women that you interview, and it's such a great space to take that taboo of home birth and, you know, the scarier thing out of it, because it really isn't. It's the most beautiful, pure thing you'd ever experience, I think.
Yeah, and we're just normal people. We're not like I mean, I would love to be a hippie, but I'm not a hippie.
Yeah,
I'm not like, you know.
Yeah.
We're just everyday people. Thank you
absolutely.
so much.
Thank you.